I see some great comments already. Someone, Victor, is looking for skills for 2026 and beyond. Victor, I'm right there with you. So I'm pretty sure some of these skills will extrapolate into 2026 and well beyond. Sorry for the late start. We were trying to figure out why StreamYard is being so laggy today. As you can see, I hope you can hear me well. But if you bear with me, what I might do here is switch off my camera because this might be somewhat annoying. Otherwise, as we've played around with various settings, but not much is happening there. So, yeah, so, and let me know if you have trouble hearing me or seeing the slides. Yeah, and a quick point, as Paula said, founder of ODSC. We've been at it about 10 years. This is our 10-year anniversary. Also, we do a lot of work on AI Plus Training, which is our training platform. And as Paula said, I'm a venture partner at Cortical Ventures. And why all of these are relevant is because all of these various roles provide me with lots of data, which I'm looking at weekly, quarterly, and definitely I try and take a very deep dive at the end of the year to see what predictions came true, what trends ended up happening, and also, most importantly, to share this with the audience, with you guys. And as mentioned, team wanted to let me tell you that this is our 10th anniversary for our in-person conference at ODSC in Boston. And that's going to be on May 13 to 15 at the Boston Convention Center. So if you can, join us in person. If you cannot, join us virtually. And again, it's our 10-year anniversary, so I think that's going to be a blowout conference for sure. All right, so agenda for today. We have quite a full agenda, which I'm hoping is going to take about 45 minutes, keep it under an hour. What I want to do is obviously our introduction here, look at AI trends in 2024, because 2024 trends are going to be a very good predictor of what we can see in 2025. I want to discuss some of the sources of these trends, such as ODSC. We also scrape a lot of job descriptions, some research we've been doing, which I hope to share as well. And also look at AI job roles, because that's been very interesting. We've seen new job roles, such as LLM engineer, and other job roles, such as prompt engineer and AI engineer, gather steam. But we also want to look at what happened to, more traditional job roles like machine learning engineer and data scientists, data engineer. We'll look at jobs advertised. Because jobs advertised is quite interesting. It can show you where the demand for skills are, which is always worth knowing. We'll take a look at foundational skills, if they've changed at all. Then we'll look at in-demand skills based on these sources we have. We look at in-demand platforms, because we used to joke, I'm sure you've heard of what we call the unicorn job description, where there's so many skills and so many platforms that expect you to know that if any one person did know all of these, we would call them the data science or AI unicorn. And then we'll take a look at top programming languages, because despite the wide adoption of AI-assisted coding tools, programming languages are still very important, and it's still a very important skill. And we'll talk a little bit about AI-assisted coding. We'll look at some of my favorite surveys from the year from both LangChain and Stack Overflow. And we'll look at some new roles and skill sets, especially the LLM engineer. There's actually not too many people out there, according to LinkedIn, with the title of LLM engineer, but we'll break down what that job role looks like. And then we'll look at a lot of talk this year about open source versus proprietary models versus market capture by OpenAI. How is that bearing out in the data? How is that bearing out in job descriptions or job advertisements? And then we'll look at one of my favorite images of the year, which would be the Matt Turk Mad AI, or Mad Landscape, as he calls it. Not really the Mad AI landscape. It's machine learning, AI, and data landscape. All right, so let's look at trends in 2024. Last year, I said 2023 was, well, last year being a year and a day, but 2023 was really a breakout year for AI, as you well know. That's when we had the most performance model of ChatGPT 4 versus 3 and 2. And that was pretty much the killer app that's pushed into 2024 and really set the AI industry on fire. So that was 2023, end of 2023 and beginning of 2024. So what are we seeing in 2024? One thing that's been very obvious is much more increased industry applications. So of course, you have a lot of chatter, a lot of noise out there about is AI really being adopted? And the data tells us that it is actually everywhere from transport to healthcare, finance, and autonomous systems has deepened. One example I love to talk about is I think Waymo Taxi now, if you've been in Phoenix or San Francisco especially, I think they've between 300 and 400 Waymo taxis on the road. So the age of autonomous machines is definitely here. You see a lot of venture investment in robotics has been a very hot space in 2024. Of course, you've seen massive investments into OpenAI, Anthropic, Mistral, you name it. And Meta's done, and Google have put huge resources into both their open source and proprietary models. And that is in thanks to wide industry applications. There's very few companies not using some form of open source model or closed source model now, such as OpenAI and ChatGPT. So you can look at that as wide industry applications. You can also argue that a couple of people in a company using ChatGPT is not really a wide application of this, but we'll get into that in more depth. Of course, some people call this hype, but agentic AI and autonomous agents have definitely seen wide adoption. Depending on how you interpret that, agentic AI could be anything from AI code assistance, which we'll look at in detail, to more advanced systems such as reasoning. So you heard last week that Gemini Deep Research, that they just came out with their reasoning tool. Of course, ChatGPT for a good number of months now. We're well beyond the release of O1. They skipped the release of O2. I think probably because of the famous O2 Arena in London, or most definitely the O2 mobile network, and they went straight to O3. So don't worry. O3 that was just released a few weeks ago, you did not miss it. That's their advanced reasoning model, and we do believe that reasoning is going to play a very large part in these agentic AI workflows, because an important skill many of us have been trying to learn in 2024 is building out these agentic workflows, and we'll dive deeper into that a little later. But there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed there, and more advanced reasoning would separately help on that. But I don't think it's a silver bullet. And then, of course, a big debate of 2023, but I believe a big debate of 2023 was one model to rule them all. Everyone thought that OpenAI and perhaps close second Anthropic was going to rule the market. And as predicted, no, open source LLMs have had a very strong showing in 2024. One can subjectively argue, and I meant to put in some leaderboards into the slide. I didn't have time, but if you look at leaderboards, you can definitely say that OpenAI has kept the lead, but performance is not the only metric as to why you want to use an LLM model. So definitely Meta, Mistral, and even some of the Google models have definitely gained wide traction, whether the llama models or Gemma models. And last but not least, for those of us I kind of find in data science and machine learning roles, we don't pay so much attention to this, but it was a huge breakout year for multimodal AI. We saw Sora from OpenAI at the was at the end of last year, beginning of this year, but now we have more models from various Chinese companies, and as well as Google and Meta, all creating these multimodal AI models, anywhere from text to video, text to image, and we're seeing that being deployed in a lot of fields, and especially the creative industries. I think the killer app for this, I think Mark Turk said this. If you know Mark Turk, a very famous VC who also created the Mad Landscape. 2025 came to the year where you can ask, instead of looking at Netflix, you can basically say, if you want to watch a copy of Narcos or Dune 2, put in your favorite actors, and it can generate a short movie for you, and perhaps in the future a longer one. So expect this to be a very, very big deal. And again, as I mentioned, I'll take questions at any point during this live stream. So, and let's continue on with that. So, yeah, and feel free to add your own voice to this conversation if you feel like there was a huge breakout expansion in any part of this AI. I only want to list it 4. So there are, of course, others, but add your own opinions to this conversation so everyone else can see your comments, because mine is certainly not the only voice we want to hear today. A great source of insight as to what happened in 2024 and trends for 2025 was the ODSC podcast. We published an odd 46 or 47 episodes in 2024, and I found it extremely interesting. We actually just released a ODSC podcast, so I think it's not on this. All the podcasts are on this link here, but I think just yesterday the team released a wrap-up summary podcast on all our episode transcripts, and we actually use Google's Notebook LM. If you've never tried this tool, check it out. It's free. Well, we use the free version to do this. We gave it 40 transcripts, 40 plus transcripts, and we asked it to give it 30 minutes, create a 30-minute podcast with their AI hosts. One is the experts and one is, I don't know, they play off against each other. It was pretty cool, Definitely a little bit enthusiastic in the commentary. It was an interesting experiment for us, so check that out when you have a chance. But a big focus of 2024 were AI agents and autonomy. Can they execute complex tasks? As of this year, that is, I would say, still a big challenge, but there's a lot of people working on solving this problem. Definitely a big focus of topics was the LLM evolution. These models, there's been a lot of chatter in the last few months that the scaling laws are slowing down a bit. I don't think that's necessarily true. The scaling laws are working fine. It's just the amount of money you need to scale the scaling laws is increasing quite significantly. Reasoning was a big breakthrough. And GPT-4, O, and O1, and now O3. But of course, the big shift for me was definitely open source, and the fact that you can download these small language models, open source language models, many, many flavors of language models onto your own workstation device, your edge device, was a huge, huge, huge deal. And we expect that to be the same. There was a lot of concerns about regulation. Regulators and lawmakers have some very valid concerns there in terms of if you want to control who has access to these open source, to these LLM models, you basically have to close down open source models at a certain level of performance, which is still a worry going forward. But I think the horse has bolted out of the barn, so no point in shutting the door now. I think it's already too late for regulating open source LLMs. So regardless of where you stand in that debate. And then, of course, industry integration. A lot of companies, a lot of our podcast guests talked about this. A lot of people I talked to in person have talked about this. What's been really interesting, and even in regulated industries, which people are saying that AI and large language model is not going to work because they're regulated. I don't think that's necessarily true at all, because these companies are deploying large language models and generative AI smartly. What they're doing is they're looking at low risk back office tasks that are automating, and then being very, very careful how they roll this out to the front end and the customers. So just because it's not in the front end of a company doesn't mean it's not being adopted. So that was pretty cool to see. And of course, as mentioned, getting this into production is still a very complex undertaking for a lot of us. So a lot of podcasts focus on that. So that was a key skill, was generative AI deployment, and we believe that'll continue into 2025. And yeah, a lot of podcasts focus on various AI infrastructures and tools. So check those out when you get a chance. Check out the 30-minute recap for the whole year if you want a quick stuff on that. But we had folks from Meta, from Google, from LangChain, Llama Index, Hugging Face on the podcast. And, it was a lot of fun. So check that out. And then a big one for me, which I found very surprising. Actually, no, that's not true. I didn't find it surprising. But it's been a constant theme throughout our conferences, throughout 2024, how complicated evaluation has gotten. So we've always, transparency and explainability in AI and machine learning has always been a big topic. And there are various tools to do that, such as SHAP and Lime and other tools like that. But really, evaluation has kind of exploded in 2024 and will continue in 2025. Because if you take an agentic AI framework, or even something similar, take a RAG framework. I actually think I have a slide on the RAG evaluation framework. But if you look at from ingesting data to building out your embeddings in RAG to building your query classifier to getting the results and then re-ranking the results and then passing them back to convert those from, say, predictions into natural language for the natural language understanding. That is many layers of evaluation right there. So in our podcast, we looked at tools like Phoenix from companies like Arise AI, open source tool, Phoenix, by the way. So we expect evaluation to be a very, very hot topic. And that was kind of reinforced by, and then, of course, ethical AI. So lots of lawsuits around OpenAI and other providers, lots of discussions around watermarking, various stuff. And a lot of this still has to be settled. There was various USA executive branch, that would be the White House, releases on AI. We saw the EU AI Act being passed. So this, again, is going to be very interesting and as we go into 2025. And just checking, I see okay, if most of you can still, because again, I'm kind of not sure why StreamYard is lagging so much today. It's usually a very, very good platform. But if others of you are having, if most of you are able to hear me and see the slides, let me know. But I see one or two people have issues and I'm blocking. Okay, so yeah, and ODSC West, perhaps some of you had a chance to attend ODSC West. But ODSC West, it was very interesting. We, as always, have some of the top speakers from academia, and excuse my typo there. That's how you know these slides are not done by ChatGPT, because of my typos and poor grammar, but poor highlighting as well. But core topics, definitely LLMs, RAG, autonomous AI agents. Definitely, as mentioned, evaluation frameworks, generative AI deployment, and open source tools. So LLM fine tuning. Again, these are going to be, and it was interesting. There was a few topics like fine tuning is dead because the context windows have grown so much. Like, for example, if you're using some of the Google tools, they have a million token context window for free, 2 million for paid. So the size of the context windows has grown significantly in 2024, and I'm not sure that's going to scale down in 2025 because inference, I do believe, is being subsidized. It's the old Uber model. We all know what happened with that. Once the VC money ran out, our cost of our Ubers and Lyfts went up significantly. Maybe that'll be the same for inference in 2025. That's actually inference being serving these LLM models. But I do not believe that fine tuning is dead at all. It's something we're doing at Cortical ourselves in house, and it is a very useful skill to have. And just because you have things like RAG and other systems like that, you still need fine tuning, especially for specialized tasks and stuff like that. So fine tuning is going to be a big deal. So we saw things like LoRa, low rank adaptation, and other pruning and techniques. So it's quantization, where you can reduce the number of bits you're looking at from, say, 32 to 4-bit. Now we see 1-bit. So basically what you're doing is you're reducing down these massive trillion parameter models down into the billions, and from the billions into the millions. And I do expect that to be a massive trend in 2025, because, of course, like anything else, when we did a first pass at building these large language models, we expect the cost to come down, as well as the inference cost to come down, but definitely the model size to come down. Because if you ever tried to fine tune large models, you have many different issues there. You want to use LoRa to only fine tune small bits of it and leave the weights the same in the rest of the models. But even for most of our fine tuning, I find this myself. Most of the time when I'm fine tuning models, it actually makes the model worse. So this is a core skill. How do you fine tune with improving the model? It is not an easy skill to learn or master. And the problem is, if you remember back, if you've been dealing with traditional machine learning for the last 4 or 5 years or the last decade, hyperparameter tuning is still a big deal, and that's basically trial and error, which is very time consuming. And when you're paying a lot of money for fine tuning, it can be painful. Retrieval augmented generation, we see this being combined now with agentic AI, and also graphing and graph modeling, and all of that is going to continue in 2025. So I would argue, to a certain degree, RAG was a killer app of 2024. I think it disappointed a little bit because the fact that you had so much attention paid to re-rankers was very important, and we struggled ourselves trying to make RAG kind of time aware. So because when embedding is just putting time in there, can kind of get lost in that, and there's kind of tricks to working around that, but still lots of problems to be solved with RAG. And as we said, evaluating RAG is a key skill, because there's lots of different steps to evaluate it there. AI agents, if you listen to one of our podcasts, one actually we just recorded in December was with Robert Brennan from Open Hands, who was, I think he used to be called Open Devon, and I'm sure you might have heard of Devon, the AI assisted tool, which is a proprietary tool, but that came out in 2023, made a big splash. But really, can we use these AI agents to automate a lot of our day-to-day tasks and our coding tasks and all that stuff? So we saw that, and definitely towards the second half of 2024, multi-agent systems is starting to be very popular. We actually had a training on the multi-agent systems on AI Plus, if you want to check that out. And then, as mentioned, evaluation frameworks. We did a lot of sessions around that. And then again, generative AI employment and open source AI. I'm skipping through these because it's a bit of a repeat what I said later, and I want to get to some real data here. So, and by the way, if you have access to AI Plus, if you're a subscriber, you get access to a lot of those sessions. Now, and yeah, quick slide on this was one of the podcasts we did earlier in the year with Rolari, which is a startup based in France and the US. And you can see here how complicated it got very quick. You want to do evaluation, your query classification on your retriever, BM25, pretty common retriever, but you can subsidize the other ones in there. And then I'm very surprised. There's one open source ranker and then Cohere ranker, but I was surprised that re-ranking is a very, very important skill when you're building your RAG ones here. I was surprised that there wasn't a lot more re-rankers in the mix in 2024. I expect more in 2025. There's more than just Cohere. There's like 2 or 3 at the moment. And then, evaluating your answer for faithfulness, relevance, correctness. These are all important evaluations. You can see here at every step of the RAG framework, there is an evaluation that has to be done, and expect the same for agentic AI workflows. So it doesn't matter if it's 5-step, 10-step, 50-step agentic workflow. There can be one or multiple evaluations that you need to perform per step, right? Because as they say, when agentic AI goes bad, the wheels come off the bus pretty quickly and get ugly very quickly. All right, AI job roles, which I'm sure a lot of you are going to be interested in this. So, a lot of movement on this. So what do we do at the end of every year? One of my quick little tasks, or some of these tasks at ODSC or Cortical, whatever, is to go into LinkedIn. You can do this yourself. And again, with all my data here, take it with a bit of a grain of salt. It's supposed to showcase general trends. So if these numbers are off a little bit, because I tried them every couple of days for the last week, and they flavor up and down. And of course, when you put in a job role on LinkedIn, you're always pulling in other stuff there as well. They don't go strictly by job roles. So again, take these more as general trends than absolutes. So a big trend we saw in 2022, 2023 was the rise of data engineer. And again, a lot of job roles, just people reclassifying themselves to go to the boss to say, hey, I no longer want to be system engineer level 2. I want to be a data engineer, which is a very smart move, by the way. So who knows how much of this is actually new jobs versus switching job titles versus switching job roles. But anyway, interesting as well how data science is the most prolific job role out there still. Because we started off as the Open Data Science Conference. We're not the Open AI Conference or all these other ones out there. Because despite the rise of machine learning, which a lot of us consider ourselves machine learning engineers these days, most people still have the data science role. So it's always been pleasant surprise, by the way, the staying power and the value of the data science job role. Now, this one here, over 300,000, is the job role with AI in it. So this actually includes any role with the AI in the title. So it could be AI product manager, marketing AI manager, AI engineer, as we have down here, and stuff like that. So again, this is just interesting because I want to kind of show this to you a little later. Then, of course, machine learning engineer, and then we have AI engineer, which we actually, to my discredit, I did not track this in 2023. So I can't really give you a comparison like I can the other one. But that really popped up this year. So AI engineer 2024, AI engineer really came out in 2023. And actually, I do remember writing a blog in 2021 or even 2020, the rise of the AI engineer. But it really took until 2022, 2023 for this to take off. And now in 2024, we see it really, really take off. NLP engineer is kind of slipping a bit. Used to be a very cool job title. I always thought there'd be a lot more NLP engineers because every company's got text. Prompt engineer saw a big increase this year. You can't really see it in this chart, so I'll blow it out on a different chart. And then the big news of 2024, as you may well have guessed, was the rise of the LLM engineer, which came into 1,000 job roles. So let's kind of break that down a little more. So, sorry, let me see if I skipped the slide too far here. Yeah, and I want to answer a question here. If I can get to that screen. Yeah, Victor's asking, are data engineer scientists also tasked with doing AI role stuff? Definitely. And how do I know that? Because we've been scraping job descriptions all year, and I can show you how similar those roles are. I think I have that data for 2023. We'll probably do a blog on that. But we saw in 2023 they were very similar, with a few differences which I can point out for 2023 data. Now you can basically extrapolate that into 2024 data. So yeah, I'll answer that question in more detail in a second. And yeah, as mentioned, Prompt engineer. Like, to be honest, a lot of us in the industry kind of laughed at this job role when it came out, because we believed it was okay, it's mostly about writing skills and things like that. I wouldn't say laugh's the right term. Maybe we scoffed at it, but it is a real job role, albeit a minor one versus machine learning engineer or data scientist. But it has become a hugely important skill. So it doesn't matter from my work at ODSC, from my work at Cortical, for some of the startups I work with and talk with. Prompt engineer, it doesn't matter if you're in marketing, sales, an AI engineer, a data scientist, data engineer, business analyst. Understanding how to do prompting, because as you well know, the tools you can use for interactive, like if you're using ChatGPT for interactive LLM work, or even using through an API, you understand memorization, understanding system prompts, understanding the various flavors. Because I use ChatGPT, Anthropic, Llama, Mistral, and my prompting skills have to be tweaked slightly depending on which platform I'm using, which is very interesting. So prompting and those skills have become very, very important. So as you can see here, and also a 50% increase, over 50% increase in prompt engineering jobs, and also a massive increase in prompt engineering mentioned as a skill throughout data science, machine learning, and LLM roles and other stuff like that as well. And to put this in context, I looked at LinkedIn and Indeed just a week ago, and figured out, and the reason why I like to look at LinkedIn and Indeed, because again, these are just guide numbers; they're not absolutes. It gives me just a better guide overall. Obviously, if I looked at more job sources, it'd be different. And I'm not saying by any stretch of imagination there's 150 jobs out there in programming or software engineering got cut off here. There could well be, because obviously we don't spend weeks curating this data. So there's obviously a lot of job duplication in these numbers. So again, just take them with a grain of salt, extrapolate them out, and just use them as guides. So jobs with the mention of AI in the role have definitely exploded in 2024. Programming is the most popular job out there, kind of dwarfs data science and data engineering. Oh, this all got cut off. Sorry. I'll have to fix that slides. But why I find this interesting is pretty much 70% of programming jobs out there require some kind of AI, whether it's using an AI API or more generally using AI code assist tools, which, to be honest, you don't need to know much about AI code assist tools to use those tools, but you do need to know how to do prompt engineering very well. For example, I use Google Colabs, and Google Colabs now has got it built into it. Eclipse has got it built into it, code assist tools. You may be using Codium or GitHub Copilot or Whisper, but you have to prompt to do some prompting there to help figure out what the issues with your code is, or to get it the right code for you. So so what we did is I took away the programming and AI role, and here's a better view. So you can see here, machine learning engineer is very much in demand. AI engineer is very much in demand. Data scientist, data engineer, and LLM engineer. What's interesting about this graph here is, look how many LLM engineer jobs are being advertised out there. So even if it's not 6,000, if it's only 3,000, look how that contrasts to the number of roles in LinkedIn, which I believe is only about 1,000, or prompt engineer, which is only 2,000. Look how many jobs are being advertised versus the number of people doing that job. There are more jobs for LLM engineers out there right now than there are actually LLM engineers. So I know many of you are thinking, especially you're a data scientist, you know what? Well, I'm just going to go and change my title to LLM engineer. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. Why not? If you want to do it, do it. I'm not going to be the one being interviewed. But I will show you the skills difference in there. So, and you can see as well with AI engineer, like the number of jobs, does it exceed the number of engineers? About 38,000 or so. It's a pretty crappy graph. It doesn't show me the actual number. Yeah, but you can see what's interesting here. And same with machine learning engineers. There's only about 50,000 machine learning engineers in the US, according to LinkedIn. And yet you've got something like 20,000 jobs in advertised. So what this means is a lot of companies are looking for these skills, looking for these roles, and having a very hard time finding them. So if you're a data scientist, you want to transition more into machine learning, that could be something interesting. If you're a data analyst or business analyst and want to become a data scientist, this is some good guidance for you. And again, just a caveat here. I call myself a data scientist, but I spend most of my time doing machine learning. And there's reason for that because I'm usually coding, and my coding skills have always been much better than my modeling or math skills and whatnot. So again, just take these titles with a grain of salt. So for what it's worth. But you can see here how the demand for some of these roles is a significant percentage of the actual roles in there. So why am I talking about this? Because I know this webinar rather is about skills, but skills are just job roles are a collection of skills. So you can see that what's in demand here is machine learning skills, engineering skills, LLM engineering skills, and all this stuff. And then some of this can be treated synonymously. Yeah, so Anna raised a good question. Why am I doing a US-based versus global? So that was the US one. Global numbers here. Yeah, these are global numbers for job roles. Sorry, these are global numbers for roles. A rule of thumb, I think the US is about 30% of this market, maybe 40, as high as that. And the reason is we were collecting the jobs by other countries. I think we got some data for Europe and the UK and India and Japan and all that stuff, but there's just too many countries. So something we hope to automate in the future, perhaps. But a great question. And I don't know. Yeah. So if you want to play around with this yourself, it's pretty easy to do on LinkedIn. Everyone's got LinkedIn. You can just go and play around with it. So if you're in a different country, you want to know how many people are in your country. So just play around with the numbers yourself. But yeah, apologize for not collecting that, but we just didn't really have the time or resources to do that. But I do have another slide here that might help answer your question here. Another question here. I click on the question before I read it, which I'm not sure is a good idea. Oh yeah, I already talked about that. So not sure what you mean by that, Sohan. Data analyst or data engineering, there are two very distinct roles. So maybe I didn't make a clear point on that, but if you want to do a follow-up question, I can answer that. So this is 2023 global. Just to give you a bit of different idea here. Data engineering was 30%, 36% of our data. NLP, not much. Machine learning, 10%. Data scientist was still a very significant role. And you can argue that data engineering is not really a machine learning data science role. I would argue it is, because you have to know about AI and machine learning and what the skills a data engineer has to know. Kind of backs up that argument for me. And again, AI is 20%, 22% of the market. But remember, this role here can be a non-technical role. And then how that compared to 2024, we can see that data engineering has slipped data science a little bit, and AI has really popped up there. So many new jobs been created with AI as a kind of a skill. AI is a role, which means, again, the role of AI is a collection of skills. So that was kind of like my big point in this slide here, how a lot of stuff is kind of like increased as you expect, 5, 10, 20%. But AI has just really exploded as a role. And again, there's a lot of title inflation there. People just putting AI in their title. I was in San Francisco having lunch with a friend about a month ago. Pretty empty restaurant, and I was not eavesdropping, but you know how they put people together and the restaurant's empty, and sometimes you can't help but overhear other people's conversation. And it was obviously two startup dudes, and they were saying, like, we got to sprinkle some AI in there. We have to have an AI angle. If we don't have an AI angle, VCs are not going to give us money, and if we have an AI angle, VCs will throw money at us. Yeah, not a good strategy for a startup. Don't back AI or bolt AI onto your idea. It's never a good idea. But anyway, so again, take it with a grain of salt. But AI has exploded. The interest in it has exploded. Here's an example of it. We collected that in 2022. It was 100,000. 2023 is 150,000, and now almost doubled in 2024. I expect that to be similar for 2025, and then kind of taper off. And it is important to understand that. Again, you can say a lot of this is hype, but look, a lot of people work in paying jobs. They would not be putting AI in their role if there wasn't some validity there. All right, so foundation skills. Let's talk about that. Not much change from 2023, but some important caveats there. So in programming, we still find this is the most important skill across data engineering, data science, machine learning, LLM engineer, you name it. And you can, as you can tell, a lot of the roles I'm focusing on are AI engineering roles, but definitely code assist tools was a big part of that. Statistics and probability, again, very important. Machine learning and LLM modeling, of course, that's very much a foundational skill now. Last year, because a lot of companies were wary about LLMs, they weren't sure if they're going to deploy them. Definitely has become a foundational skill, definitely modeling. And data wrangling, data-centric AI is still a very much important thing. And of course, data visualization and communication is very important. And problem solving and analytic thinking has been really, really important. Again, it helps you with prompt engineering and other skills. So we still believe these are the 6 most important foundational skills out there. Again, feel free to share your own insights. And yeah, getting back to Sohan's the difference between these skills, right? So let me answer that question by let me answer that question in a second. So let's get into some of the skills that we mine. So we collect this data weekly. Caveats again, jobs reflect a past need and necessarily not a current need. So be careful with that. There's also a lag, like hiring. Sometimes people leave job posts up for 6 months because they're just like kind of fishing for resumes, and they're doing it as almost like a resume capture. And then there's hidden requirements, a lot of cutting edge requirements. When we talk to, oh yeah, I don't want to hire an LLM engineer. I just want to hire a data scientist who knows LLMs, right? So a lot of job requirements are hidden. And again, I'm not trying to scare you on that fact. It's just that think of it more about cutting edge stuff like that. If O3 came out, you're not going to advertise for an O3 expert, right? Rather, you would advertise for the job skills someone would have if they would also know O3. And then a lot of HR and managers do this. They just like, oh, I'm going to hire an LLM engineer. So what's an LLM engineer? Well, I can ask ChatGPT. Or they'll take a data science job description or machine learning engineer job description and just tweak it. So that's a big problem with a lot of data we collect. I believe there's a lot of recycled skills in there. So again, those are my warnings before we look at this data. So all right, so to answer your question, sorry, I don't know why this is so sticky here, because I'm hitting the button trying to make this move. All right, so data engineering. You asked the question, So data engineering, like when we look at, and again, these are just skills, and it's a mix of skills and platforms. In data engineering, programming is mentioned, being able to access databases, work with Databricks, Spark, ETLs, extract, transform, load, big data. Interesting that Java's in there because a lot of this stuff is legacy platforms. Java is the biggest legacy program out there, not Python, by the way. Communication skills. It's interesting how communication skills cut across the board. And then you have data engineering platforms like working with APIs, Kafka. Scala is in there because that's the language that Spark uses. Hadoop is a big data platform, and data science is a skill there as well. And I'm working with platforms like Tableau and Amazon Redshift, which is a data warehouse. So again, this is just 20 skills. So data analysis is quite different. You wouldn't have Python in there. You probably have database and SQL maybe. You wouldn't have ETL. You wouldn't have Spark. You wouldn't have programming. Communication skills would be very close. So lots of reasons. With data analysis, you'd be working more with Tableau. So this, for a data analyst, you would be less, if little or no programming, a lot of work with data sources. Maybe you're working, and a big difference too with data engineering for data analysis is data analysis, you tend to work with small to medium-sized data. Where data engineering, you have to work with medium to very large data. Like in data analysis, you might be working with spreadsheets or querying a database. With data engineering, even querying could take very, very long. So you're working with data on a massive different scale. And when you work with data at a different scale, a very large scale, it requires a different set of skills, right? You can't just simply query the data. And again, as my caveat here, this is inherently imprecise, so don't take this as a grain of salt here. Yes, there's a question here on different language skills. I'll get into that in a minute. Yeah, and Victor, whatever your boss wants, that's right. But what about your future boss, Victor? What does your future boss want? That's what we're focusing on today. Well, not necessarily, but could be. All right, so that was 2023. To be clear, that was 2023. For 2024, I mixed things up a little bit. I looked at for 2023, I also put in like the biggest skill for data scientists is data science. The biggest skill for machine learning engineer is actually machine learning. And I kind of compared this with prompt engineering to see how it's different. Because one of the questions people always ask me, well, what's a data scientist versus a machine learning engineer versus a prompt engineer? Well, let the job market tell you. And again, with all the caveats I told you, the job market is imprecise. But you can see here, there's a lot of common things here. Statistics, data science, I believe, is more about the science, the scientific methods, understanding the math, the statistics, the models. You can see that here. Statistics is like, you're going to go a data science job interview. They're going to ask you about statistics and probability. Whereas in machine learning, it's going to be more about the programming, the engineering, the APIs. Like machine learning is done on the cloud. Data science is done in your laptop, which is not necessarily true. But, maybe one rule of thumb. We can see here, continuous deployment integration. That's a software engineering skill. So machine learning is definitely a marriage between data science and software engineering, whereas data science is definitely more a statistician and data science. And then prompt engineering, you can see NLP is very high up. Large language models is much higher up. Writing is a very important skill for software engineering, which you don't see in any other job roles. Problem solving, generative AI. But you see a lot of commonalities here. That's why you can shift between these job roles. Computer science, machine learning, communication skills. So again, we'll send these slides to you so you can go through them in detail. And let's look at platforms, which is also interesting because what's so amazing is despite talking about OpenAI and Anthropic and Llama and all these tools, and maybe it's because a lot of companies just copy and paste job descriptions, as I mentioned, but still, like for most of us who are using fine tuning, we're using PyTorch, we're using TensorFlow as part of our scikit-learn, right? So surprisingly, this hasn't changed a whole lot. Hugging Face has made huge inroads in the last couple of years. A lot of us now use Hugging Face, so that was a big one here. Of course, you have Llama Index and LangChain for orchestration. But you can see here in the data science and machine learning roles, and a complaint we also get is a lot of companies complain that everyone's focusing on prompt engineering, LLM engineering, large language models, but most companies, especially with customer-facing and front-facing AI, they are still very much deep in the weeds of classical and traditional machine learning. And the use of these platforms kind of reflect that. You can see what data science and machine learning engineering, a lot of these are platforms you know well. Whereas in prompt engineering, now you see OpenAI getting in there. Hugging Face is a big deal in the LLM word because if you want to use models, check out leaderboards. You can actually run models on Hugging Face, or actually through Hugging Face right now. You can play around with open source models. So Hugging Face is very, very popular for that, even though it's risen up in data science and stuff like that. And you can see OpenAI and machine learning and Llama Index. So my takeaway from that, prompt engineering and LLM engineering, those roles and collection of skills is definitely at the forefront of LLM right now, closely followed by machine learning. A lot of people are hiring machine learning to implement LLMs, and data science is somewhat lagging. So that's not to say that an individual data science role or an individual data science of different companies not doing this, but just an indication of that, right? Did I not remove the comment clip? Yeah, I did. Thought I did. I don't see it now. Top programming languages, because we have a few things on that. David asked about that. Top programming languages for data science, machine learning is the same. Do I have a slide on machine learning? Yeah. A lot of people in data science are still using R. I use it now and again, but Python has kind of taken over data science to a certain degree. You see some Scala because of the popularity of Spark and stuff like that. Java's legacy. SQL, you can say, is not a programming language, it's not a script, but whatever. It is a very important scripting tool for accessing your data. And then we were seeing some stuff with C++, machine learning. I think C and C++ are there in machine learning because you want to speed up these, because Python is known for being pretty slow. And a few people mentioned by role. There was another question about new languages. We see people using more Julia, more Go. There's a few new languages introduced last year, which I can't speak much to because I don't know much about them. But again, for traditional roles, I think it's still very much Python. Sorry, I'm trying to show this question here. Oh yeah, there it is. Very laggy. Yeah, so not going to spend too much on this slide because I would take this with a grain of salt. You can see, again, R is more popular for data scientists and machine learning engineer, but I did have one here. Let's wait until we get to the LLM engineer, because the languages that LLM engineers are claiming to be using is quite interesting. So for most of the job descriptions we were scraping throughout 2024 using various APIs, I think we had, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of samples across all job descriptions. And then I think for some job roles, we had 40 or 50,000. But for LLM engineering, we only started collecting that job role from October. So we only have 4,000 samples. So to be honest, when you're doing this kind of topic modeling, is not a great sample size. We rather have tens of thousands, if not more, hundreds of thousands. So again, disclaimer, take this with a grain of salt. But when you look at large language and LLM engineering, which is again a good skill here, you see, and what's reassuring to me is like a lot of skills you already have: machine learning, data scientist, engineering, communication skills, deep learning. They're all most relevant. So if you're looking for a new role as an LLM engineer, you need those traditional and classical machine learning data science skills. But of course, you also need large language models is a huge part of that. So, and again, this can mean anything from working with large language models, closed source, open source, fine tuning them, you name it. And then of course, RAG is a big one here as well. But still, mathematics and research and data science and pipelines and MLOps. And this also explains why, as I said in LinkedIn, there's about 1,000 so-claimed LLM engineers. And whereas there's thousands, a couple of thousand jobs out there for this. And I expect it to stay the same because not too many people have this skill set, right? This is a pretty tough skill set to set. And even if you've been working with large language models, unless you've been working with them full time for the last 2 years, and at Cortical, I'm head of AI there, and we're building our own in-house stack, and I've been working with large language models and fine tuning and RAG for the last year, and we're pretty decent at it. But we say we're experts at it. No, I wouldn't go that far, and Cortical would agree as well, unfortunately, because we've other jobs to do as well. Yeah, so this is interesting. So, and then the platforms, again, same story. Like definitely new platforms out there like OpenAI and API, Llama Index, LangChain has been very popular. If you've been doing orchestration, you've probably been using LangChain or Llama Index. But you see Snowflake's PageMaker, NLTK, which is a very famous NLP library, and Keras and TensorFlow. But a telling one here is, again, as mentioned, how far up in the screen Hugging Face is. That's because Hugging Face is widely used in with LLMs because of it's a great service for accessing open source models, especially. And with so many of us using open source models, that's a key thing there. Which models are you using for the role? Because, especially in the VC world, there's always a claim like OpenAI has captured the markets, and you look at the number of OpenAI users, and then by a close second, Anthropic, and then Google. But I don't believe so. And it's hard to know, but like if you look at the downloads, it's very hard to tell. But if you just look at job descriptions, again, we've only got 4,000 of these. But open source things like Llama is the highest at 25%. OpenAI is the second, and again, there's no, well, more or less, there's some free open source OpenAI models in Hugging Face, like GPT-3, but I think that's deprecated. Google definitely has open source models, but for the most part, you can see that this market is split between open source and closed source, and open source at the moment has the edge, and I would expect that to increase because open source is not free because you still have the inference cost unless you're running your laptop and a very small language model. But inference costs are a real thing, and there is definitely a cost there. All right, so those are some of the models. So so using tools like OLAMA, which you can download onto your laptop, is kind of key. And then someone asked a question earlier about languages. Are the language different? So why is R there? And again, if you're an R programmer, yes, I know you can use large language models with R. And yes, I know you can do a lot of LLM skills with R. And as an R programmer myself, I mean no disrespect, but why would you want to do that? Learn Python or something else here, but you can still see, and you can see C has risen up the ranks here from we saw with C++ for other job roles, because you want to speed up these processes, and that's why you see CUDA here. So if you never program with CUDA, I used to use CUDA. It was pretty painful. It's like programming with assembly language, if you're old enough to remember what that is. But CUDA was if you want to optimize GPUs and NVIDIA chips, or put a little routines in there. That's pretty interesting. And then PySpark is also become pretty popular as well. So I'm going to wait until to answer some of those questions because I know it's coming up in the hour. So I did want to talk about AI code assist tools because many of you listening to this webinar or listening in the future are probably developers yourself, but many of you are not. So I would strongly encourage you to start using some of these AI code assist tools, because don't buy into the hype of no code. No code will always have drawbacks, which I don't have time to get into. And as I always say, there's never been a better time to learn how to code. And you don't even actually have to learn how to code. Just use the code assist tools. Because if you want to take advantage of the agentic AI workflows that are coming out and RAG and stuff like that, use these codes to build out the stack for you. It can be very frustrating if you don't know how to code and you're just using these code tools, because you give it prompts and tell it to fix the code, and a lot of times it actually doesn't fix the code. So anyway, with that disclaimer, I would encourage you to do that. So one of my favorite surveys from this year was the Stack Overflow one. It was saying that 76% of all respondents were looking to use code assist tools. and a big increase in number of people using it. 62. And this survey, by the way, is from I believe it was mid-year or even earlier, so it's a little bit outdated. But again, we extrapolate the data. What was super interesting, and again, as I just mentioned, sometimes working with these code assist tools can be very frustrating. I actually think that it's hard to know whether it's going to. The tools will get better, but our expectations will get better. So if you're not working with a code assist tools, maybe your company doesn't allow that. Start working with these tools, because this has become the de facto standard. And what's amazing is I don't know if I believe this survey. I think there was, how many people did this survey from? I thought I included that number, but if you go to the website, you'll see it. I think it was a good number. But ChatGPT, yeah, I definitely have in the past used ChatGPT to help me with my code. I've gone away from using that. I tend to use Copilot or Google Colab instead, but Codium is very popular. And also, too, if you use Eclipse, if you use Visual Studio, all these integrated development environments, IDEs, are all getting code assist now. So this will change over time. But these are, 65,000. That was a pretty big, thanks for that, Asi. That's a pretty big number. So I would expect this to change a lot. But of course, we have, there is a coding, another coding tool from OpenAI now, specific Coda. Then you also have Codex and other open source tools available. So this, I think, is going to change. What was interesting on the Code Assist tool side was a lot of people are using it personally, which I think is very smart. So if your company doesn't allow it for whatever reason, then use it yourself. People use them for more high-level strategic projects. I read that to be projects that are not core to the company's mission. And I think it's great for, if you're learning the code, it shouldn't be your only way to learn. You should still learn the old-fashioned way and then use that as a resource to learn. But for those of us who already know how to code, learning new frameworks and tools is very important. So again, you can check out that survey. Want to skip over this one, but some roadblocks for using it were complexity of issues and don't trust the output of answers. I would say I don't trust the output of answers most of the time. So people say you're supposed to get 50% productivity boosts with AI code assist tools. We actually did a little test with our own coding team, and when it's all said and done, the checking and code reviews, I think it's more like 20%, but they'll get better over time. And another survey I liked here, the URL for the here's LangChain. This is a much smaller survey, but AI agents has been a hot trend for 2024. I kind of believe this myself. Lots of people said it's been overhyped. So why would I bring this up? Because I do believe it's going to be a big skill for 2025. And I do believe a lot of it's hyped up, but there are some very important skills there. I think to a certain degree, AI code assist tools are AI agents or agentic AI or part of agentic workflow. So that's a big one there. This I kind of question. 78% have active plans to implement agents into production soon. But again, maybe I shouldn't be a skeptic about that, because it could be a very small project. At the end of the day, what are agents? We can argue over the definitions, but they're basically just small snippets of code that employ tools to get the job done. As I argued earlier, tracing and evaluation are top tools that must have controls. And 41% say quality is the biggest issue. And yeah, we have a lot of problems. We have built out some agents over 2023 and definitely spent a lot of time on this in 2024. And performance quality is the biggest bottleneck. And testing is a huge problem. And then the most surprising result here is 51% of respondents are using agents in production today. I'm like, okay, where are you using them? Because I'd like to know. And it turns out that they're using it for research and summarization, which is interesting because exactly what we're using AI agents at Cortical for. So we're using it to summarize open source projects, research into robotics, research into AI and things like that. And I'll show you actually how we're doing some of that. Code generation, customer service, which is interesting. That would be pretty dicey, but they've got to be better than today's chatbots, which are pretty poor. Data transformation enrichment, synthetic data is a big skill now that people are looking at, and this is very interesting. So check out that LangChain survey, very, very, very deep stuff there. And this is the mad landscape. If you've never seen this before, it's a very interesting thing to look at. It's actually interactive. I provide a link to it in the slides, which, as you can see, I source from Reddit. But you can dive into there for MLOps, what people are using here. So this is what we call the Goldilocks. Sorry, not the Goldilocks, the unicorn skill set. And the LangChain survey is. And that's the one here. What did I have? There was something else I wanted to show you guys before I wrapped up. So if you're an advanced practitioner, something we've found very useful. We built this out for Cortical Ventures. Let me see if I can show it to you here. Apologies again. Things are so laggy here. 2024. Obviously, we don't have 2025 yet. I'll skip doing a live demo on that because StreamYard I can see has been very, very laggy. But basically we don't do anything very sophisticated here. We basically take we look at archive research papers. And by the way, there's a new Google tool. I'm not sure if it's freely available now, but it's called Google Deep Research. It's their reasoning stuff. But it allows you. It basically goes out and scrape the web. How much it does on research papers, I don't know. You can also look at Google Scholar. We use Archive, but we basically look at all the papers, and then we do topic modeling based on the paper title plus the paper abstract. We don't look at the whole paper itself, and from those we do some pretty classical topic modeling. And it's very interesting because you can see things like federated learning, which I'm sure a lot of you may be rolling your eyes and heard a lot about federated learning maybe 5-6 years ago. But federated learning is a very important technique. It allows you to share data while preserving privacy. It's a privacy protection, privacy preserving measure. And we follow this at Cortical. We follow research at Cortical a lot because think about when you're looking for funding or starting a startup, what is your mission? Your mission is to solve an unsolved problem. And in AI and data science and a lot of engineering roles, the best way to figure out what an unsolved problem is to look at the research going on around that, because research is generally about a new topic or an unsolved problem, right? Or it's looking to solve make a breakthrough, right? So you can see here, autonomous systems are a big deal in research. Federated learning, deep learning, neural networks, graph learning is a big deal. There's a lot of breakthroughs in that. Risk management, transfer learning. That's of course large language models, and attention is all you need, and all that kind of stuff. Optimization. So if you're an advanced practitioner, I would say, and we have clusters around robotics and other stuff like this. But since this is mostly about AI, I'm focusing on machine learning here, but model transparency, dimensionality reduction, because again, reducing down these large language models, smaller ones. So if you're advanced practitioner looking at archive, trying to summarize the general trends of these papers, because for sure, some, but not all, but definitely some of these are going to be very important skills in 2025 and 2026. So Victor, I think it was, who said, well, what about 2026 and beyond? I did tell you that I had an answer for that. And it usually takes a few years for this to play out, but expect this to be coming down the pike. I did want to show you robotics as well, but I think that'll be less interesting to people. And we're also kind of out of time here. So we will send these slides on to you. And again, I'm happy to answer any more questions because I know I'm kind of over time. So any last questions before we wrap this up? No. What did you guys think? Did you think it was accurate? Think I was way off base? What's your take? What did I miss? Any big misses there? Because I'm sure I missed a lot. So let me know if there's any big misses or what your thoughts were. The slides, it is Friday. A lot of our staff are off. So I believe we will email the slides out with a follow-up on Monday. Let's see here. I do have a quick... Yeah, Jennifer's got a great question because I've been actually asking this question myself to a lot of people I know. As far as I can tell, no, because generally think about the way, and again, this is not how. So jobs that require a coding element, how are the interviews been done? For the most part, you're going to have a screening call, which is done virtually. They're going to ask you some general questions. And yeah, I know you can probably cheat on that, but for the most part, people are honest and still ask you some general coding questions. But a lot of jobs still require the dreaded blank room test where they actually put you into a room. They take away all your devices and they ask you to code out a solution, right? But what's been interesting is, and I do believe this is a good trend, some forward-thinking companies will actually ask you, what's your favorite code assist tools? And then what they do is they just adjust the interview to include the code assist tools, right? Because it's almost a frame. Remember when IDs first came out, like code completion? I can't remember all the, when I was interviewing as a programmer, they would actually ask me the parameters in a given function. You have to memorize them, right? It was ridiculous. How many parameters can then? But now those interview questions are long gone. Because when you do an interview, they give you an integrated development environment where you can actually, it'll tell you or hint or prompt you on what the different parameters are. So I do see companies are still, for the most part, doing the old-fashioned way, where they put you in a room, give you a terminal, give you a coding program, like build a front end, build a back end, query some data. But a few companies I've started here are giving code assist tools. But the downside to that is they just make the challenge a little harder, right? They may ask you to build a full application using the code assist tools, right? And they're trying to figure out how much coding you're doing, how much prompting you're doing. So that's interesting. And yeah, so that's what I've heard so far. So definitely the takeaway from that is no. For now, assume that the interviews have been done the old-fashioned way.